If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the podcast. Discovery of the unidentified body on Somerton Beach. The sun barely touched the horizon when John Bain Lyons stepped onto the cool sand of Somerton Beach. December 1st, 1948 would be a morning he would never forget. The Adelaide resident had come for his usual early walk along the pristine coastline, expecting nothing more than gentle waves and morning calm. But something was wrong. Near the seawall, a figure lay motionless against the sand. At first glance, Lyons thought perhaps someone had fallen asleep after a late night. The man appeared well-dressed, wearing a suit despite the beach setting. His head rested against the wall, legs stretched out straight, almost as if he had simply sat down to watch the ocean. Lyons moved closer. The man's skin held an unnatural pallor. His eyes were closed, but there was no rise and fall of breathing, no movement at all. The police arrived within the hour, their boots crunching across the sand as they approached what would become one of Australia's most baffling mysteries. Detective Lionel Lean took charge of the scene. Immediately noting details that made little sense, the unknown man appeared to be in his 40s, with a healthy build and well-groomed appearance. His clothing showed no signs of struggle or violence. A half-smoked cigarette lay nearby, as if he had been calmly enjoying the evening before something went terribly wrong. Most puzzling of all, there were no obvious signs of injury or trauma. Dr. John Barclay Bennett conducted the initial examination right there on the beach. The body showed no external wounds, no blood, nothing to suggest a violent end. Yet the man was undeniably dead and had been for several hours based on the condition of the body. Word spread quickly through the small community. Local residents gathered at a respectful distance, whispering among themselves about the stranger who had died on their peaceful beach. Nobody recognized him. Nobody had seen him before. The authorities searched his pockets, hoping for identification. They found a railway ticket, some coins, and oddly, a pack of cigarettes of a different brand than the one he had been smoking. But no wallet, no identification, no clues about who this well-dressed stranger might be or where he had come from. As the morning progressed and crowds grew larger, one fact became increasingly clear. This was no ordinary death on a quiet beach. The man's identity remained completely unknown, and the circumstances of his death defied simple explanation. The mystery had begun, and it would puzzle investigators for decades to come, unveiling the cryptic clues and mysterious items. The detectives thought they had found everything, but sometimes the most important clues hide in the smallest places. 3 months after the Somerton man's body was discovered, investigators made one final check of his clothing. They found something extraordinary. Hidden in a tiny pocket sewn into his trouser waistband lay a rolled piece of paper, no bigger than a postage stamp. On it, 2 words were printed: "To Mom Should." The words meant nothing to anyone at first. They looked foreign, mysterious, but a librarian recognized them as Persian. The phrase meant finished or it is ended. More importantly, these exact words appeared on the final page of the famous book of poetry. The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam was not just any book. This collection of ancient Persian verses about life and death had captured readers for centuries. But why would a dead man carry these specific words? The answer came from an unlikely source. A local man read about the case in newspapers and contacted police. He had found a copy of the Rubaiyat thrown into his car months earlier, around the time of the death. The back cover was torn. The missing piece matched the paper found on the body perfectly. Inside this book, investigators discovered something that made their hearts race. Someone had written a secret code on the back page. 5 lines of seemingly random letters filled the space. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, each letter formed with precision. MRGOABAB MTBINTP MLIABOAISTGAB. Below the code, they found a phone number. It belonged to a woman who lived nearby. When questioned, she claimed not to recognize the dead man, but witnesses said she looked shocked when shown his photograph. Her face went pale. She refused to say more. The coded message became the most studied puzzle in Australian criminal history. Code breakers, mathematicians, and amateur detectives spent decades trying to crack it. Some believed it held the key to the man's identity. Others thought it might reveal why he died. Each letter seemed to mock investigators with its secrets. Was it a cipher? A love letter? Instructions for a spy mission? The possibilities felt endless, but the solution remained just out of reach. The book connection suggested this was no random death. Someone had planned this carefully. The code felt personal, intimate even, like a final message meant for one person's eyes only. The inquest and early attempts at identification. The coroner's room fell silent as officials examined the body once more. This was no ordinary case. The man on the table held secrets that seemed to slip away with each passing day. Dr. John Burton Cleland presided over the inquest with growing concern. Never in his career had he encountered such a puzzle. The body showed no signs of violence, yet something was clearly wrong. The man's organs told a story of sudden death, but the cause remained hidden in shadow. Fingerprint experts worked with careful precision. They rolled the dead man's fingers across ink pads and pressed them onto white cards. These prints would travel across Australia and beyond, searching for a match in police files and military records. Days turned into weeks. The prints came back with the same answer every time. No match found. The dental examination brought fresh hope. Surely someone would recognize such unusual dental work. The man's teeth showed expensive care, the kind only wealthy people could afford. Gold fillings glinted under the examination lights. Yet when dentists across Adelaide studied the detailed charts, they shook their heads in confusion. No patient matched these records. Missing persons reports piled high on Detective Lean's desk. Worried families called daily, wondering if this mysterious stranger might be their lost loved one. Each lead seemed promising at first. A missing husband from Melbourne, a businessman who vanished from Sydney, a sailor who never returned home. Yet one by one, these hopes crumbled as relatives identified their missing family members elsewhere or provided details that didn't match. The public appeals grew more desperate. Newspapers printed the man's photograph alongside detailed descriptions of his clothing and physical features. Radio broadcasts carried the same information to homes across the country. Someone, somewhere, must know this man. But the silence stretched on like an endless night. Strange contradictions began to emerge from witness statements. Some people claimed they had seen the man days before his death, walking along the beach with purpose. Others insisted he appeared lost and confused. These conflicting accounts only deepened the mystery. Medical experts offered theories that seemed to contradict each other. Some suggested poison, though no traces could be found. Others pointed to natural causes, but couldn't explain the unusual condition of his organs. The man's physical fitness suggested an active lifestyle, yet his death seemed sudden and unexpected. As weeks passed without answers, a troubling realization settled over the investigation team. This wasn't simply a case of mistaken identity or missing paperwork. Someone had worked very hard to make sure this man could never be identified. The question that haunted everyone was simple yet terrifying. Why? The suitcase and the elusive connections. The detective walked through Adelaide railway station on a cold January morning in 1949. Workers had found something strange in the cloakroom. A brown suitcase sat alone on the shelf. Nobody had claimed it for weeks. The case looked ordinary enough. Brown leather, well worn from travel. But inside waited clues that would make the mystery even deeper. Police opened the suitcase with careful hands. Inside lay clothes that told a story. A red dressing gown hung neatly folded. Pajamas sat beneath it. Shaving gear rested in one corner. Everything a man might need for a short trip. But something felt wrong about these items. The labels had been cut out, every single one. Someone had taken scissors to each piece of clothing and removed the tags. Who does that, and why? The investigators found more strange details. A pair of scissors lay among the clothes. Were these the same scissors used to cut the labels? The thread ends suggested careful work. This wasn't rushed or sloppy. Someone had planned this. Then they found the orange thread. Tiny pieces clung to one of the shirts. The same orange thread they had found on the dead man's clothes at Somerton Beach. The connection seemed clear. This suitcase belonged to the mystery man. But questions multiplied like shadows. Why had he left his suitcase at the station? Where had he been going? The railway workers remembered nothing. No face matched their memories. The shaving kit held American brands. The clothes showed quality tailoring. This man had money. He traveled well. Yet he had died alone on a beach with no identification. Police traced the few remaining clues. A laundry mark appeared on one item. T. Keene in faint letters. Hope sparked in the investigation room. Finally, a name to follow. But T. Keene led nowhere. No missing person matched. No records surfaced. The name might as well have been written in smoke. Days turned to weeks. The suitcase revealed its secrets slowly. Each item suggested comfort and care. This man had taken pride in his appearance. He had planned for a longer stay somewhere. The amount of clothes suggested days, maybe weeks of travel. Yet here he was, found dead just miles from where his suitcase waited. Had he been coming back to collect it? Had something stopped him? The questions hung in the air like morning fog. The brown suitcase became a symbol of the mystery itself, full of clues that led nowhere, rich with details that explained nothing. Every answer it offered only whispered new secrets into the growing darkness of the case. The woman known as Jessica Thomson, the phone number sat there in the margins of the torn book page. 7 simple digits that would lead police to a woman who seemed to hold secrets she would never fully share. Jessica Thomson lived just 5 miles from Somerton Beach. When detectives knocked on her door in 1949, they expected routine questions and quick answers. What they found instead was a woman whose reactions puzzled them for decades to come. She opened the door that morning and saw the police officers waiting. They showed her the torn piece of paper with the phone number. Her face went pale. Her hands started to shake. For a moment, she couldn't speak at all. The officers watched her carefully. This was not the reaction of someone hearing about a stranger's death. This looked like recognition. This looked like fear. Thomson finally found her voice. Yes, she knew about a copy of the Rubaiyat. She had given one to a man she knew during the war. His name was Alfred Boxall. But that was years ago, she said. She hadn't seen him since. The detectives pressed for details. Who was this Boxall? Where could they find him? Thomson's answers came slowly, with long pauses between each word. She seemed to choose what to say very carefully. They arranged to meet again. This time, they brought something special. They had found Alfred Boxall, alive and well in Sydney. He still had his copy of the book. It was complete and undamaged. So whose torn page was this? And why did it have Thomson's phone number? The next meeting changed everything. Police brought a plaster cast of the dead man's face. They wanted Thomson to look at it, to tell them if she recognized him. She took one look and turned away quickly. Too quickly. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. She gripped the edge of the table with white knuckles. "I don't know him," she whispered. But her body told a different story. The officers exchanged glances. They had investigated many cases. They knew what shock looked like. They knew what grief looked like. This was something else entirely. Thomson's behavior only deepened the mystery. She gave conflicting statements about dates and places. Sometimes she remembered details clearly. Other times, her memory seemed to fail completely. Neighbors began to whisper. They had seen a well-dressed man visiting Thomson's house in the months before the body was found. He was tall and fit, with distinctive features. He came at odd hours and never stayed long. The description matched the dead man perfectly. Espionage theories and Cold War context. The world was watching in 1948. Two superpowers stared at each other across an invisible line that split the globe in half. Fear hung in the air like morning fog. Every shadow could hide a secret agent. Every stranger might be carrying state secrets. Adelaide sat right in the middle of this chess game. The city buzzed with military bases and defense projects. Rocket testing happened just outside town. Foreign ships docked regularly at the port. If someone wanted to spy on Australia's growing military might, this was the perfect place to do it. The man found on Somerton Beach fit the spy story too well to ignore. No identification, no fingerprints in any database. Clothes with all labels carefully removed. These were not the actions of an ordinary person preparing for a beach walk. Then came the coded message. 5 lines of letters that made no sense to anyone. Mergo Abad D and other strange combinations. Professional code breakers studied them for months. Nothing. The letters seemed to dance just beyond understanding, taunting investigators with their silence. Spies lived by codes in those days. They needed ways to talk without being caught. Simple codes could hide meeting places, contact names, or mission details. The strange letters in the book could have been exactly this kind of message. People whispered about the woman who owned the book. She lived alone with her small son. Neighbors said she acted nervous when police came asking questions. Her past remained murky. Some wondered if she had been part of a spy ring that went wrong. The Cold War made everyone suspicious. Ordinary deaths became potential murders. Random visitors turned into foreign agents. The government needed citizens to stay alert for threats that might be anywhere. But doubt crept in too. Real spies usually had backup plans. They carried false papers or had ways to contact their handlers. This man had nothing except mysteries wrapped in more mysteries. Would a professional agent really end up so completely lost? The timing felt wrong to some experts. Major spy operations happened in big cities near important targets. Adelaide was growing, but still small. What secrets could justify such elaborate planning? Still, the questions refused to disappear. Why remove every possible way to identify him? Why carry a coded message at all? Why did the woman seem so frightened when investigators appeared at her door? The spy theory grew stronger as years passed without answers. When normal explanations fail, extraordinary ones start to make sense. Perhaps this ordinary-looking man had been carrying secrets worth killing for. Advances in forensic science and DNA analysis. For 73 years, the Somerton Man kept his secret. Then, science caught up with time itself. In the quiet halls of modern forensic laboratories, something extraordinary was happening. Scientists had learned to read stories written in the smallest pieces of human remains. They could take DNA from bones that had been silent for decades and make them speak again. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. While the Somerton Man's body had been examined countless times over the years, new methods could extract genetic material from samples that earlier techniques couldn't touch. The DNA was fragmented and degraded, but it was there, waiting. Professor Derek Abbott, who had spent years studying the case, partnered with genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick. Together, they began the painstaking work of genetic genealogy. This wasn't the simple DNA matching you might see on television. This was detective work at the molecular level. They started with tiny fragments of genetic code. Each piece was like finding a single letter from a burned book. Slowly, carefully, they built genetic profiles. Then came the real challenge: finding living relatives who shared this ancient DNA. The process felt like searching for specific grains of sand on an endless beach. They compared the Somerton Man's genetic markers against databases containing millions of profiles. They looked for matches, even distant ones, that might lead them to family trees. Month by month, the puzzle pieces fell into place. They found cousins, second cousins, people who shared great-great-grandparents with the mysterious man. Each match brought them closer to the truth. The family trees grew backward through time. Names appeared, dates connected. Patterns emerged from the genetic chaos. And then, in 2022, they found him. Carl Charles Webb, born in Melbourne in 1905. An electrical engineer who had lived a quiet life before disappearing into history's shadows. The announcement sent shockwaves through the community of researchers who had spent decades wondering about his identity. But knowing his name only raised new questions. How did Charles Webb end up on that Adelaide beach? Why was he carrying that cryptic note? What events led this electrical engineer from Melbourne to become one of Australia's greatest mysteries? The scientific triumph felt bittersweet. They had solved the puzzle of who he was, but the riddle of why he died remained as mysterious as ever. Charles Webb's identification opened new doors, while others stayed firmly closed. Sometimes the most advanced science can tell us everything about a person, except the most important thing: what really happened to them? Enduring questions and unresolved mysteries. The man lay still on Somerton Beach that December morning in 1948. His body perfectly positioned as if he had simply chosen to rest. But death had visited him in the quiet hours before dawn, leaving behind a puzzle that would haunt investigators for decades. His heart had stopped. This much the doctors knew. But why? The autopsy revealed something strange. His spleen was enlarged, 3 times larger than normal. His liver showed signs of damage. These were not the organs of a healthy man, yet he appeared fit and strong from the outside. The pathologist found traces of something in his blood, something that shouldn't have been there. The tests of that era could only hint at poison, but they could not name it. Was it digitalis from foxglove flowers? Perhaps strychnine? The answer slipped away like smoke, leaving only shadows of suspicion. Here was a man who had removed every trace of his identity before death found him. His clothes bore no labels. His pockets held no wallet, no papers, no name. Someone had cut away the manufacturer's tags from his shirt and jacket with surgical precision. This was not carelessness. This was planning. The tiny piece of paper hidden in his watch pocket whispered of secrets. Those strange letters, Tamam Shud, torn from a book of Persian poetry. But even when police found the book, more questions bloomed. A phone number penciled inside led to a woman who claimed she didn't know him. Her face told a different story. The code scrawled on the book's back page looked like a message waiting to be read. Letters arranged in careful rows, as if each one mattered. Cryptographers studied those marks for years. They tried every method known to break codes. The letters remained silent, keeping their secret locked away. Years became decades. Technology advanced. DNA testing arrived like a promise of answers. Scientists worked to identify the man, to give him back his name. They studied his bones, his hair, any trace that might speak his truth. But even when science finally whispered a name, the deeper questions remained. Why had he come to Australia? Who was he running from? Or running to? What poison had stolen his breath that night? The code still sits unsolved, its meaning buried with the man who wrote it. Some mysteries refuse to surrender completely, even to our most powerful tools. They remind us that behind every scientific breakthrough, human stories hide in shadows, complex and unknowable. The Somerton Man had lived, loved, and chosen his final secret. Death may have claimed him, but the mystery he created continues to breathe.